Is monopolistic competition efficient? So hopefully you can answer this question, right? Hopefully you've got a good idea. It's not, right? The answer is no. Now there's two sources of the inefficiency, and hopefully I've kind of talked about these already, so hopefully you kind of have an idea already of what these two sources are. One is that the average total cost is higher compared to perfect competition, so they're not minimizing cost. So that's one source of the inefficiency. And then the other source of inefficiency is the fact that they're charging a markup. Price is greater than marginal cost. Now, should the government intervene? Well, maybe, maybe not. I don't think so. So firms are not able to earn long-run profits, right? Since there's no barriers, that's the main source of zero economic profit in the long run is this free entry and exit. And so if the government were to try to intervene in any way, it might put firms out of business, right? They're already earning zero economic profits. If you put any more restrictions on them, which would basically be costs, if you increase their costs, then some firms are going to go out of business. And then on top of that, if the government were to impose some restrictions, there would be fewer firms, right? Some firms would have to leave the industry as a result of these higher costs due to regulation. And less firms means basically fewer choices for consumers, right? And more inconvenience. And so, although there is some inefficiency, it probably isn't enough to warrant government intervention. It would do more harm than good, which isn't necessarily the case with monopoly, if you read that extra section. Now, with a high degree of differentiation, such as between Urban Outfitters and Hollister, there's going to be a larger loss of efficiency. Whereas with a lower degree of differentiation, such as between Domino's Pizza and Pizza Hut, there's going to be a lower loss of efficiency. So that's how these things are related. Okay, so a highly differentiated product means things like higher prices, higher markups, which of course we saw were that was one of the sources of inefficiency was markups. So higher prices and markups means more inefficiency. And then of course it's also going to turn out to lead to larger excess capacity, which is the other source of inefficiency. And the less differentiated products are going to have lower prices and lower markups and less excess capacity, so less efficiency loss. So graphically, what does that look like? Now, hopefully you already have an idea of why this demand curve is steeper than this one, right? When there's a higher degree of differentiation, there's less competition, less elastic, right? Versus lower degree of differentiation, more elastic, okay? So that's why the demand curves have different slopes. Now we're in the long run equilibrium condition, right? Zero economic profit, the average total cost curve just barely touches the demand curve, so there's going to be zero economic profit. And as you can see, in this case, there's a pretty large degree of excess capacity, whereas in this case, because of the flatter demand curve, there's a lower degree of excess capacity. All right, so let's think about this. Again, thinking about whether maybe or not the government really wants to intervene. Is this inefficiency so bad, right? Which would you prefer? Situation A, where pizza is produced in slightly higher quantities with slightly lower prices than currently is the case. However, all of these pizza restaurants are the same brand. So let's say Pizza Hut, for example. Would you prefer this situation? Or situation B, where pizza is produced as it currently is today, slightly lower quantities with slightly higher prices compared to at least perfect competition. But the trade-off there is, remember, life's about trade-offs. The trade-off is you have more variety, more choices, right? And there are different types and styles of pizza being made at different restaurants. So Papa John's, Pizza Hut, and then of course even nicer pizza, brick oven pizza from fancy restaurants. I think most of us would prefer situation B, right? The trade-off is worth it. The slightly higher prices and slightly lower quantity is definitely worth the variety, right? All right, let's get some more practice. What is true about the long-run equilibrium for firms in a monopolistically competitive industry? If you need to, take a minute, pause the video, and figure it out. All right, so hopefully, after not too much thought, you figured out the answer was C. Prices equal to average total cost in the long run, so zero economic profit, but there is some markup, right? Price is greater than marginal cost, and there is some excess capacity. The price that is being charged is greater than the minimum of average total cost. Answer choice B, of course, is the perfectly competitive situation, so you could have eliminated that. All right, how about this one? Which of the following is true about product differentiation? Again, if you need to, pause the video and take some time to think about it. And hopefully you came to the conclusion that the correct answer was B. More differentiation leads to greater differences in price. Right, so this is the example we saw with Hollister and Urban Outfitters, where there's a high degree of differentiation, so a greater change in price, more markup, greater excess capacity, as opposed to things like pizza, right, with Papa John's and Pizza Hut and Domino's, where there's pretty much a lot less differentiation, which means that markup is less and excess capacity is less.